China has. Supposedly, there's some talks going on unofficially, but they've kind of backed off on some of the tariffs they made against us. They're in a way worse position than we are here in this whole trade.
Get ready for a new episode of KP Talks Dollars and Cents. Learn financial literacy and get real-time updates on all things housing, finance, and real estate. So let's get started. Here's your host, Kevin Perenio.
Hey, it's KP coming to you live from Arlington Stadium. Jordan Wild, Don Miller, Jason, Sam, Justin Amala, Michael Jones. We are walking into the Texas Mortgage Banker Association's annual meeting. They have a Rangers game as part of the festivities Monday night here after a full day of trade show stuff. So, very critical week. We started off on a good spot. The 10-year Treasury is at 420. 420. So after 3 weeks of turmoil, and most people probably other than me that you read about, the world is coming to an end. Life is going to be hell. We're going into a depression. 5% 10-year rates. Cats and dogs living together. Total anarchy. Anyway, don't ever believe the hype you read in the media. You got to look at data. And I'm not saying we're out of the mess, because there's certainly a lot of uncertainty ahead. And, you know, we may still go into a recession, which, by the way, is very good for the housing industry. Extremely good. Interest rates get very low, and interest rates drive everything. They drive affordability, home affordability. They drive demand. They drive business. So there's something to be said there. Not that we want that. But I think the labor market is really strong right now. It's jobs week. It's very important. This week is jobs week. The job opening labor turnover report comes out tomorrow. And, of course, the big number on Friday, it's the BLS jobs number. It's the April jobs number, and that's huge. So our demographics in America is we don't really have enough people to work. So we have a problem with not having enough workers. And, that's one good thing about immigration is that you import workers into this country to take on jobs. But let's just talk about that for a second. As I sit here in left field, here you go, get your little Rangers. There you go. Oh, yeah. A nice little left field single live on demand. I didn't even plan that, obviously. So the problem is we just don't have enough workers. And let me give you an example. When you talk about reshoring and manufacturing in America, you can't just reshore. There are 100 million workers in China that are in manufacturing. There's like another 20 million in India, another 10 million in Vietnam. Like, you can't just bring 100 million plus jobs into America. Not they're all for American stuff, but our consumer is strong. So it's going to be hard to bring manufacturing to America. It's going to take time. So my guess is that trade deals will continue to get cut. There's a lot of news of India, South Korea, and the European Union going to cut deals that may be announced this week. So that's huge, right? That brings more certainty, less uncertainty, less volatility. And the 10-year Treasury is reacting, obviously, at 420, which is kind of the range we've been in before all the tariff uncertainty was introduced. So let me get you a little... Wish the video was a little bit better. Anyway, it's a big week. The Treasury refunding announcement went out. That's a big deal. So remember, the Treasury Department every quarter announces how much they need to sell to fund our government. So it's like a 2-3 day process. So today they announced how much they're going to sell. Hey, buddy, come up there, boys. So they announced a pretty decent amount of Treasuries that's going to be sold. Sorry, security. Would have looked at my wristband. So tomorrow, the amount of Treasuries that are being sold that was announced today, they'll start to talk about, like, is it 7-year, 5-year, 10-year? What is the makeup of the yield curve that they're going to be selling? And the bond market found it very friendly today. So like 40% of the S&P is announcing Q1 earnings this week. So Meta, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, plus a whole host of others are all saying how much, they made in Q1, but also what they think about going forward. That's a big deal because the flow of money matters. So 40% of the S&P announces this week. We get Q1 GDP reading Wednesday. We get the personal consumption expenditure Wednesday. Friday, obviously, jobs report that I mentioned earlier. It's a humongous week. Now, what's going on with China? So China has, supposedly there's some talks going on unofficially, but they've kind of backed off on some of the tariffs they made against us. They're in a way worse position than we are here in this whole trade. We trade more with them than they do sending to us. Now, it's very interesting to see like all these descriptions of like the boats that are empty. And like if a boat comes over here, a cargo ship comes over here, it comes to our port, it's got to reload and go back. But they're being canceled because they have to reload and go back. So, I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think it's going to be, less than fear, of course, like everything else. So, no runs here, just another single. Anyway, it's a super important week. I cannot stress enough. This is one of my shorter videos. TMBA is doing a great job for breaking stickers, content. Hopefully my audio is good. I'll get back to you soon. Cheers. Hey, it's KP coming to you live from Newport Beach. It is 11:45 p.m. And I wrote this quote down last week from one of my stock subscription services. It's from Helen Keller. You keep your face to the sun, you never see the shadows. And then Phil Bodnar, who put some really good content out here on LinkedIn on Tabrasa, he had a nice Robert Plant picture out there. So we talked about our shadows longer than our souls. Nice little stairway reference. Anyway, it's been a crazy day. I had to get this quick little walk in Newport Beach and get some data that's been swirling around in my head off my chest, because if I didn't, my video at the end of the week would be like 15 minutes long and I wouldn't be able to get it all in. So this is one of those rare weeks where it is so jam-packed with information that I need to do 3 videos. My condolences go out to all those traveling home from the Texas Mortgage Bank Association, which was a great show, great content, very well attended. But we had thunderstorms in Dallas this week. Today was pretty bad. So I won't bore you with all the details, but all of our road warriors, we know what it's like to have a flight cancellation the day before and then another one in the morning, and then put on a flight to Burbank instead of your home airport, and then delay on American at DFW, and then I cancel it and buy a flight to Southwest Airlines into Orange County, which gets delayed, and then I go to Ontario, and then I pick up one at Long Beach, and then I have to cab it home 30 minutes to my car at a different airport. Anyway, enough of that. Q1 came out, Q1 GDP, gross domestic product, and our economy is 70% consumer spending. 70. It's a big deal. So how is a consumer? 3 weeks of tariff talk, just 3 weeks, has thrown the world economy and certainly all the market bears into a tizzy. And bull markets always climb a wall of worry. So there's a lot to worry about when there's uncertainty. But there's more certainty every day. And so one of those pieces of certainty that came out was our gross domestic product. And so I'm going to give you the raw data, and then I'll give you the White House spin, which I think is worth mentioning. So it was a negative GDP. It's negative 0.3%. 5 full points, 500 basis points were taken off. About 4.83 or 4.89 was taken off because part of the GDP calculation is like imports versus exports. And so if we import more than we export, it's negative for GDP. We are not producing as an economy, we are consuming. But we have the strongest consumer in the world. 4% of the population and like 26% of the world's spend comes from Americans, the American consumer. Wages were up, spending was up in that GDP report. And now, the interesting thing, though, about the import prices, that 5% hit to GDP to bring it down to negative, is that's seen as an anomaly, a one-time thing. It's like never been that low because of imports.
I think ever, if where I read, at least not in decades. So just to put a bow on that thought, the fear of tariffs caused a lot of companies and I guess importers and producers to buy a lot of goods ahead of potential price increases. So that's a one-time thing. And that's also based on the worst case scenario. On Liberation Day, they held up that chart and the tariffs, the rates were high. People were like, oh my gosh, 29% tariffs, I think we're under 20 at this point. The worst was on that chart, but not reality. So everyone but China's been cut down to 10%. Deals are being worked on. I don't know what deals are going to announce this week. It takes time to work through them. But if tariff trade deals get worked out between us and India, the European Union, the UK, Japan, you start to create this coalition of people that also think China is cheating, which they are. And so we'll see what the end result of that is. So when the details come out from trade deals, there'll be more certainty. It may not be as good as the White House is touting, but again, would be all less than feared on Liberation Day in the Rose Garden, which caused this import influx. So I think that worst is over. That's my opinion. But we're trying to get a peace dividend in the world too. And something really, really big happened today. And it's kind of under the radar. There was a mineral deal, a rare earth mineral deal struck with Ukraine, between the United States and Ukraine. That means Trump and Zelensky have a framework for a deal. This is the Back Bay. Sunday before I hopped on a plane to Dallas, I took my little 6-year-old Serafina and her daddy-daughter hike for her Daisy troop. Bunch of dads and a bunch of girls looking for snakes and stuff. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm getting the hell away from that. You talk about that Ukraine mineral rights deal. That's a humongous deal, because then it also lays the framework for the United States to protect its economic interests in that country, which should help ratchet down the fighting and the war that's going on between Ukraine and Russia. And then maybe we get some more peace in the world and we get some more stability. So that's a big, big deal. Meta, Facebook, and Microsoft both had their Q1 earnings reports today, and their investment is not pulling back. So CapEx, capital expenditure, what we spend on big projects, big stuff. Do we decide as mortgage lenders to go invest in some technology and get into the AI race? Well, the biggest AI names out there have said and reaffirmed their guidance. Hey, we're going to keep spending. And that's huge. That means the AI trade is still on. And you can look at the stock market. It's still ripping. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not responsible for your losses, only profits. But if you look, it's since that tough week after Liberation Day in the stock market, the VIX, the volatility index, high yield spreads, corporate bonds, investing in companies, even the S&P index, they've all retraced over 50% from their low. Okay, a 50% retracement is a big deal. It's like a Fibonacci number that matters technically, and we've more than 50% retraced now at this point. So that's all a big deal. CapEx is a big deal. The AI trade is still on. I saw an interview with Jensen Huang, the CEO and founder of Nvidia, like the chip maker and software of chips and semiconductors in the world that's powering all this AI craze. He says China's right behind us. They're right with us. But this AI race that they're right behind us is an infinite race. It's never going to stop. And if you think it is, you're sorely mistaken. And we haven't even scratched the surface in what AI can do in our world and change our world. And Meta, Microsoft, not only reaffirmed that guidance with CapEx spending, Meta even raising it, they both crushed top-line revenue estimates. They crushed earnings, which is like net profit. So it's still game on, and that's a big deal. So who else reported earnings today? Fannie Mae served 287,000 housing units across rentals, single families, all that stuff. was a big deal, providing liquidity. I'm not going to get into, privatizing Fannie and Freddie right now, but it's good to see that they're very healthy and continuing to backstop the housing industry. I think they reported net earnings of $3.7 billion in 3 months. It's crazy. Who's going to privatize that? Who's going to own that? That's a lot of power to wield. Anyway, I digress. I won't talk about that. So job front, job opening, labor turnover. There's only 7.1 million job openings, but the hiring is still good. Even though the number was flat on the hiring percentage, it was a good, healthy number. I think it's like 3.7%. Quits were up a little bit. There's just a little over one job opening in America for every person that needs a job. So weakening, but not breaking. So that's a good thing. Our demographics in this country for jobs, we just don't have enough workers to do all the things you want to do. I mean, like I mentioned in my video on Monday night, like how are you going to bring 150 million manufacturing jobs that are, in 3 countries in Asia to America? It's going to take time. So, robotics, AI, physical AI, doing physical labor and manufacturing, it's going to be super important. So it's also super important that all the Magnificent Seven continue to spend money on AI and infrastructure. And so these deals matter. They're huge. PCE, I'll probably talk about that in the jobs report a little bit more on my Friday video. I'm going to do a Friday video. But the personal consumption expenditure came out today. That's the Fed deflator, the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. It was a little hot. So inflation's there, but it's mostly services. So people are still going out, they're traveling, they're going to dinner, they're doing experiences, even though goods, inflation moderated, went from 2.5 up to, I believe, 2.8 on the headline number. And if you exclude food and energy, which nobody does in real life, it's 2.7. So oil is still inexpensive, gas is inexpensive, but services lifted up. Kind of a decrease in auto parts and autos in general, and that's just a sign of low rates. So, we talk about liquidity. We don't have a liquidity crunch. The Fed even said it was just stress after Liberation Day. It didn't feel like doing quantitative easing. So we don't feel like there's a lack of dollars and support. And look at the bond yield. 10-year Treasury is like under 4.15. Rates are good. April was good for us at PRMG. I'm sure it's good for everybody everywhere. And, May's shaping up to be a great month. So we'll get some more data out and talk about some more stuff as the week goes on. And I'll cut this one here. It's a little chilly. Time to unpack and get ready for a full day in the office. Cheers.
Hey, it's KP coming to you live from Newport Beach. Hustling my ass over to flag football for my 7-year-old son. And I promised 3 videos this week. We had a huge news week, massive news week. So I'm in a quick video, I promise. It's not going to be one of those 10-minute, 20-minute, 15-minute dillywags. So jobs week's over. 177,000 jobs were created. And that was higher than expected. And wage growth is important. We've talked about inflation being a problem. The only inflation the Fed is worried about right now is what might happen because of tariffs. And that's it. So wage growth is slowing. It's still at like 3.4%, I think is what it is. So it's slowing, which is a sign of softening labor market, softening labor market is not quite ready for the Fed to cut, but a breaking labor market would be. The 2-year Treasury yield, I don't know what it went to today, but it's been well below 437. And so the argument that the Department of Treasury and the president has been making for the Fed to cut the rates is that the market rate, 2-year Treasury, is super low. It's got room to cut multiple 25 basis point cuts. And so inflation is, we saw was tame this week, in that mid 2.5 to 2.8% range on the PCE, the Fed's core deflator. Now, here's what's interesting. This is a very interesting thing. I've talked a lot on these videos for years, my entire life, running like a madman because I feel like the middle class is going to get wiped out. Look at Europe. You cannot buy a property in Europe. Either you are rich or you're not. Either you have or have not. We're not there yet in America, as evidenced by,
when rates get below 6.5%, there's this huge rush of demand to buy homes. It's still getting more unaffordable. Prices are going up. We saw the price index continue to go up. Insurance goes up. Taxes goes up. It's getting less affordable, but you can still buy a house. You may have to move outside of town to get the starter home, like you had a piece of crap car, your starter car. Get out there, open a door, have an asset, rent it out, then go to the next one, or sell it. Don't ever sell a property, by the way. Don't ever sell a property. If you cannot, by all means, do not sell a property. It's so hard to open a door, and it's only going to get harder, and they're only going to go up. We just don't have enough homes for the amount of people that come into America. And so in Europe, this is very interesting. To my point, the way they calculate their CPI, their consumer price index, they have like this harmonized price index, which basically is ex-shelter. So because it's so hard to get a home, they don't even count shelter expense, like buying a home, in this harmonized version of their CPI. And you know what they're at? 2.2%. 2.2%. Our Fed PCE, which has got a lot of housing in it, historically for 40 years at 2.4%. We're not going to get to 2%. It's not going to happen. So what is our harmonized ex-shelter CPI? 1.8%. 1.8% inflation for all the other stuff. Eggs, lumber, cocoa, you name it. They've all been coming down. Prices have been coming down. Well, Mrs. Disinflation, right? They're going up at a slower speed. They're still going up. But so are wages at a much higher rate. So if you have a job, keep it. It's harder to find one if you don't have a job. Continuing claims this week was up over 1.9 million. Jobless claims came out this week at at 244, 42, 47. I see all these different reads. I don't understand why the data is different on different places. But ex-shelter, we're good. Cut. Fed cut. It's a huge important point. By the way, in housing, the CFPB, the 1,400 jobs that got whacked, which were stayed by a judge. This judge is telling the executive branch how to run their agencies. There is a stay of execution at the CFPB. There was a hearing this week. Thank you, Elon, for buzzing at me. So there was a stay of execution this week for the CFPB employees. And so the judge basically said, you gotta hold off until like the middle of May. We need to have another hearing and talk about what you guys think you're doing. So they're trying to decide like what's the right number. So a judge is trying to decide what the right number is of employees at the CFPB, which is a government agency. Anyway, fascinating. So that's housing news this week. Rates tick back up, but they're back in the range they were at before the 3 weeks of Liberation Day that caused everyone to freak out. End of the world, recession, 5%, 10-year Treasury, cats and dogs living together. I've already said that once this week, but if we get some deals cut and some trade deals cut where the baseline 10% tariff is taken off because some of the other countries get rid of their stuff they're doing to us, tariff and non-tariff policy, those are going to be some wins. But we have, slowing GDP. Now, the last point I want to make. The White House put a spin on the GDP number, and I want to talk about their spin. I'm not saying I 100% agree with it, but we all know that higher imports was a really big deal on GDP, because all this 5% of the GDP points came down because people were pulling through goods and buying them ahead of potential price increases. And of course, you saw that poster board that was shown on Liberation Day. I mean, people were freaking out like, oh my God, everything's gonna be so expensive. Here we are, California traffic. Here, make fun of me, everyone. Look at this. I mean, look at that. Boom, come to a grinding halt. Anyway, so now, if those goods don't get sold and there are inventories in Q2, that is something that would increase GDP. So there could be, kind of a blowback on the next quarter. But here's what the White House said. They said, if you just looked at consumer spending, but more importantly, CapEx, it's, consumer spending is about normal in the GDP read for Q1. But they said that people investing in America and building warehouses and reshoring, what they're trying to do, the whole point of the tariff policy, was up 22%. And no one's talking about it. Literally, no one talks about it. Like, that's a big deal. You know, if there's some reshoring that's going to be done, and manufacturing or jobs or whatever gets brought back here and not done overseas, so, you know, to not have to face, you know, potential tariff hikes with our new tariff policy, that was the point. Bring jobs back to America, reshore some jobs. So in Q1, before, you know, Liberation Day, 22% up. So that will portend to higher GDP later on down the road whenever those factories and that capital expenditure comes back online. You know, the Mag 7 all reported, all the, you know, Apple, Amazon, Meta, all of them, they all reported, and they're saying, Microsoft, they're going to keep spending. They're going to keep building data centers. They're going to build data centers. And so if they're building AI, but most importantly, physical AI, we'll have a bunch of robots doing a bunch of crap, like buy laundry, make drinks, grab the mail, you know, play guitar at parties, and just basically, you know, tell my kids to go to bed and help them brush their teeth. So in factories, though, that's a big deal. 20 billion humanoid robots are anticipated to be on this planet of 8 billion. 20 billion humanoid robots. Tesla makes a ton of them. There are a bunch of other ones that make them too. So we're going to see how that all plays out. And I would just say, as it relates to GDP, you know, that we're going to watch and see, you know, what happens with these tariffs, because, you know, everyone's on bated breath. But the worst is over, in my opinion. And if we have a recession, that's great for mortgage rates, and we all win. And I hope you all won. And I'll make one last point. We're still under 9 minutes. Originators did a damn good job taking in a ton of locks. If there's a $2 trillion year this year, $1.5 trillion of it's purchase business, it's not the servicers that are winning that. They're not good at that at all. Who's good at that? Originators, local originators. And you guys crushed it in March, and you guys crushed it when rates dropped down violently in the first week of April. And the fundings in March and April showed it. May's going to be even better. Have a wonderful weekend. Cheers.
You've been listening to KP Talks Dollars and Cents, a top-rated show for those who want to learn about the economy and mortgage environment. Tune in each week for more episodes, and please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Kevin Perenio does not render or offer to render personalized investment or tax advice through KP Talks Dollars and Cents. The information provided is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, tax, investment, or legal advice. For more info, follow KP Talks Dollars and Cents on all of our social channels.